You know, usually when we talk about solving a really massive, overwhelming problem, uh, there's this default expectation that we just need to apply more outward force.
Right, like we just have to push harder against the world.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. It's like, well, imagine you're standing in the middle of this turbulent, raging ocean. The waves are just crashing over your head.
Yeah, and the current is actively pulling you under.
Right. And your instinct, I mean, our collective human instinct really, is to try and calm the waters and frantically slapping the waves with your bare hands.
Oh, man, yeah.
You just keep fighting the surface, right? Thinking that if you exert enough outward energy, if you just, splash hard enough and fast enough, eventually the water around you is finally going to go still.
That is, it's an incredibly vivid image, and it really just perfectly encapsulates the modern condition.
It really does.
Because it's an exhausting way to live, and ultimately it's just a futile way to operate. We are so culturally obsessed with external manipulation.
Oh, 100%.
We genuinely believe that if we just rearrange the furniture of our lives enough times,
Like getting the right job.
right, the right job, the right house, the perfect daily routine, we think if we fix all that, the internal anxiety is just going to magically evaporate.
We're basically trying to engineer inner peace through sheer outward hustle.
Exactly. We're all just slapping the water.
But then, you step into the profound philosophical framework of the Bhagavad Gita, and suddenly that entire approach is just turned completely upside down.
It really is.
Krishna essentially looks at you and says, stop slapping the waves. He introduces meditation here, and not just as some casual 10-minute relaxation technique you do right before bed.
Right, not like an app on your phone.
Yeah, he introduces it as the supreme ultimate path to union. He takes this entire concept of yoga and elevates it from mere outward action, from all that frantic splashing, into this profound, silent, inner contemplation.
Which is a massive shift.
It is. The instruction is to literally stop fighting the surface, take a breath, and just dive deep, deep beneath the waves to where the water is already perfectly still.
It really is the absolute definition of a paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
We are moving away from the chaotic physics of the external world, and we're beginning to explore the vast, silent, and honestly almost intimidating architecture of the internal world.
Intimidating is the right word.
And the text doesn't just, tell you to go do this.
Yeah.
It provides the exact mechanical blueprint for how to actually achieve it.
Which is what we are going to dive incredibly deep into today, step by literal step.
Absolutely.
But hey, as we start this journey, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of these deep dives. And please, drop a comment below on what stillness actually means to you in your daily life right now.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that.
Are you currently slapping the waves, or have you found a way to dive beneath them? Let us know, because today, welcome to our deep dive into the source material. We are completely focusing on Chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita.
Also known as Dhyana Yoga.
Right, the yoga of meditation. And what makes this deep dive so special is that we aren't just reading the raw translated text today. We are unpacking it alongside the brilliant, truly microscopic commentary of Adi Shankaracharya.
Which just adds so many layers to it.
It really does. Our core mission for this conversation is to guide you through this dramatic, highly specific transition from your outward, worldly duties straight into the disciplined, inward journey of real meditation.
And, to really appreciate the magnitude of Chapter 6, we have to understand the bridge we're crossing to get here.
Okay, set the stage for us.
Because this chapter does not exist in a vacuum. It is deeply connected to the overarching narrative of the Gita. If we look back at the previous chapters, Krishna has been laying down the foundational concepts of karma yoga.
Which is the yoga of action, right?
Exactly, the yoga of action. And he's also exploring the nuanced philosophy of renunciation. You simply cannot just leap from a chaotic life directly into deep meditation.
I mean, I've tried. It doesn't work.
No, it really doesn't. Shankaracharya's overarching perspective for this entire text is vital to grasp right from the start. He views meditation as the ultimate tool. It's the necessary mechanism that stabilizes the restless mind and finally reveals the eternal self.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
A huge catch. His crucial caveat is this: you have to earn the right to sit still.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you have to prepare the mind through action before you can successfully withdraw from action.
Okay, wait, let's unpack this. Earning the right to sit still? That sounds almost counterintuitive, Usually we think of sitting still as the starting point, not the reward.
That's how we treat it today, yeah.
Right. Because right at the beginning of Chapter 6, Krishna completely redefines what it means to be a true yogi or a true monk. and it totally subverts the expectations of his time.
It was wildly radical.
The text explicitly states that he who performs his duty without depending on the result is a true monk and a true yogi. It's not merely the person who abandons their societal duties.
Or as the text specifically phrases it, someone who does not keep a fire.
Right, or is completely actionless.
Yeah, this is a massive, incredibly radical clarification that Krishna is making here. To understand the impact of this, we really need a little historical context.
Please, because the fire thing is a bit confusing.
So, in the ancient Vedic society, keeping a fire wasn't just about, staying warm. It referred to the daily rituals, the sacrifices, and the societal duties expected of a householder.
Like your basic responsibilities to your family and community.
Exactly. The prevailing cultural assumption back then was that to be a true monk, a true spiritual renunciate, you had to physically abandon your home, put out your ritual fire, leave your family entirely, and retreat to a Himalayan cave to literally do nothing.
To just be physically actionless.
Right. Physical inaction was equated directly with spiritual purity.
So it was all about the optics then. Like, if you look like you've given up the world, you must be holy.
Precisely. And Shankaracharya's commentary cuts right through that illusion. He draws a brilliant, razor-sharp distinction between the sage who wishes to ascend to the heights of meditation and the one who has ascended.
Okay. Wishing to ascend versus having ascended.
This is vital. For the person who is still trying to climb the mountain, who is wishing to ascend to Dhyana Yoga, outward actions, specifically karma yoga, which is performing your worldly duties without selfish attachment, that is the absolute required means.
It's the prerequisite.
It is the mandatory curriculum.
Yeah.
But once that person has truly ascended, once their mind is actually purified of those desires, then and only then does inaction, or the complete withdrawal into the self, become the means to remain established in that elevated state.
Okay, I conceptually understand the progression here, but let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Because if I'm listening to this and I'm being told that to be a true yogi, I have to perform my duties without caring about the result. Like, if I'm a surgeon who isn't supposed to care if the surgery is successful, or an entrepreneur who isn't supposed to care if the business goes bankrupt, doesn't that just make me completely apathetic?
I hear that all the time.
Right. How is apathy a spiritual practice? It sounds like a recipe for just giving up and being absolutely terrible at your job.
That is the most common and, frankly, the most dangerous misunderstanding of this text. It's an excellent pushback. But you are conflating detachment with apathy.
Okay, what's the difference?
They are entirely different psychological states.
Yeah.
Apathy is a lack of energy.
Right.
It's a lack of care. It's lethargy.
Just not caring at all.
Exactly. Detachment, in the context of karma yoga, is the perfection of action without the paralyzing anxiety of the future. The surgeon still uses all her training, all her focus, and all her skill to save the patient.
She's totally dialed in.
She performs the action perfectly, but she does not tie her ultimate sense of self-worth to whether the patient lives or dies, because she inherently knows she cannot control every variable of the universe.
Oh, wow.
She controls the effort. She surrenders the outcome. Apathy reduces the quality of the action. Detachment actually elevates the quality of the action because it completely removes the ego and the anxiety that clouds our judgment.
Wow. Okay, that distinction completely shifts the framework. It's not about not caring. It's about caring deeply about the process while actively letting go of the prize.
That's a great way to phrase it.
It's like using a booster rocket to escape Earth's gravity.
Yeah.
The outward action, that passionate performance of your daily duties without being chained to the outcome, that selfless action is the booster rocket.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right, because it provides the massive thrust necessary to get you out of the heavy, suffocating gravitational pull of your own ego, your anxieties, and your selfish desires.
Yeah.
But once you're actually in orbit, once you reach that zero gravity space of mental purification, if you keep firing that booster rocket, you'll ruin the orbit.
You'll shoot right past it.
You'll throw yourself right out of the peaceful trajectory. You have to detach the rocket and embrace the stillness of space. So it's not about running away to a cave right away. It's about how you operate in the hustle of the world first.
That booster rocket analogy is spot on. The thrust of the rocket is the active purification of the mind. Shankaracharya emphasizes over and over that performing actions without hankering for the results is what attenuates our selfish desires.
Attenuates, meaning it weakens them.
Right. When he uses language like burning up the impurities of the internal organ, what he's essentially talking about, in modern terms, is rewiring the psyche.
Just reprogramming the brain.
He's talking about burning away the neurotic, ego-driven impulses of the mind. If you bypass that step, if you just run to a cave with an impure, highly agitated mind that is still completely full of desires and anxieties, you aren't meditating.
You're just sitting in the dark.
You were just sitting alone in a cave, agonizing over the world you left behind. You were physically isolated, but mentally, you're still standing in the middle of a crowded marketplace.
Right, your brain is still in traffic.
The physical renunciation of the world means absolutely nothing without the internal renunciation of your expectations.
So, if you are listening to this right now, maybe you're sitting in traffic or at your desk or folding laundry, I really want you to lock on to this concept. Listen closely here, because Krishna's precise definition of the true yogi is someone who renounces selfish expectations.
The text calls this sankalpa.
Right, sankalpa. You renounce that while still actively fulfilling your worldly role. You can be in the middle of a bustling city, fighting for a promotion, raising 3 kids, paying a mortgage, and if you are performing those actions as a dedication without being emotionally hijacked by the anxiety of the results, you are doing the exact work of a true yogi.
You're firing that booster rocket.
Exactly, you're firing the rocket.
And achieving that state of detached action is monumental. It creates a really profound baseline of mental clarity. But this naturally raises the next critical question.
Which is,
Once you have used that booster rocket, once you have achieved that baseline of mental purification through selfless action out in the world, what comes next?
right,
How does this true yogi actually transition from the loud world of action into the silent practice of deep contemplation? How do you detach the rocket?
exactly. Because philosophy is wonderful, but at a certain point, you need a methodology. We know who the true yogi is conceptually, but how does this person actually sit down and practice?
Yeah, what's the actual technique?
And this leads us directly into the physical and mental mechanics of meditation laid out in the text. And because we are entering the space of dhyana, of actual deep meditation, I actually want to consciously slow down our pace here.
That's a good idea.
We are shifting gears. The instructions Krishna gives in chapter 6 are not vague poetic metaphors. They are not open to loose interpretation. They are incredibly specific, deeply deliberate, and physically grounded. So listen closely as we walk through this.
Yes, the precision is honestly striking. Krishna moves seamlessly from high-level, abstract philosophy to what is essentially an ancient, highly technical manual for physical and psychological alignment.
A technical manual, I like that.
He is literally setting up the laboratory conditions for the mind.
Okay, let's start with the physical setup, the absolute foundation. The text outlines the exact requirements for the seat of meditation. It says it must be in a clean place.
Makes sense.
And it states very clearly that the seat cannot be too high and it cannot be too low. And the construction of the seat itself is wildly specific. It says it should be made of cloth, skin, and kusa grass, placed sequentially one over the other.
Very specific.
Now help me understand this, because to a modern ear, gathering grass and animal skins sounds like wilderness survival, not spiritual enlightenment. Why on earth is it so specific?
I know, it sounds super archaic until you examine the underlying mechanics.
Yeah.
Let's really break down the why according to the text and Shankaracharya's commentary. This isn't about ancient interior design aesthetics. It is about creating an insulated, stable, and completely neutral environment for a highly sensitive internal process. Let's take the height of the seat first.
Right, not too high, not too low.
Shankaracharya notes that a seat that is too high might create a subtle, maybe even subconscious fear of falling,
Oh,
and that keeps the nervous system slightly agitated. A seat too low might expose you to dampness from the earth or insects, which again forcefully pulls the mind outward to deal with physical discomfort.
so it's about minimizing absolutely every possible external distraction.
Exactly. And the materials serve the exact same purpose. Kusa grass is widely known to be an insulator against moisture. The animal skin, which traditionally would be a deer or tiger skin used by ascetic wanderers who found an animal that had died naturally, that serves as a deeper layer of thermal insulation.
Keeps the cold earth away.
Right. And then the cloth on top is simply for physical comfort. The entire layered configuration is designed to insulate the meditator's physical body from the Earth's temperature fluctuations, moisture, and subtle energetic currents.
That's fascinating.
It is an ancient technology designed to make the physical form a perfectly neutral, undisturbed vessel.
It's essentially the ancient equivalent of a modern sensory deprivation tank.
That's exactly what it is.
You're trying to create an environment where the body sends zero emergency signals to the brain, like, I'm not too cold, I'm not falling, I'm not wet. The brain can finally stop monitoring the perimeter.
Exactly. The alarms are off.
And once that seat is established, the text moves upward to the posture. You are instructed to hold the body, the head, and the neck erect and entirely still. Okay, posture is common in meditation, but then the focus of the eyes is strictly dictated. You are instructed to look intently at the tip of one's own nose and not look around. I have always found this instruction so fascinating. Why the tip of the nose? Why not just close your eyes completely, which is what like 99% of people do when they try to meditate today?
That is a brilliant question, and it gets right to the heart of neurobiology, even though they were describing it thousands of years ago.
Let's hear it.
Let's look at the mechanics of sensory withdrawal. The eyes are our primary mechanism for engaging with the external world. They process massive amounts of data every millisecond. If you leave your eyes wide open, you are constantly stimulated by the environment.
Right, your brain is processing shapes, light, movement. It is impossible to turn inward.
You said it earlier, your brain is busy rendering the room.
Rendering the room, exactly.
But if you close your eyes completely, what happens? For most people, closing the eyes signals the brain that it is time to sleep.
Oh, for sure. I'd be out in 5 minutes.
Right. You risk physically drifting off, or worse, you immediately drift into subconscious daydreaming. The inner movie screen just turns on, and suddenly you are replaying an argument you had 3 years ago at the grocery store.
Story of my life.
By directing the gaze specifically to the tip of the nose, you create a point of convergent visual focus. Your eyes are half open, taking in light to stay awake, but you are not actually looking at anything external.
It just locks everything in place.
It locks the visual cortex into a static, neutral, monotonous position. This physical convergence actively prevents the mind from wandering outward to external stimuli while keeping you tethered to wakefulness. It is quite literally a physical hack to induce mental stillness.
That is unbelievable. So you are basically short-circuiting the brain's default mode network by jamming the visual feed with a static image of your own nose.
That's a great way to put it.
The body is locked into the earth, the spine is a straight antenna, the eyes are locked. But the text doesn't stop at the physical body, does it?
No, it goes deeper.
It goes deeper into the internal posture required at this exact moment. It says you must remain seated with a placid mind, free from fear, firm in the vow of a celibate, and having the mind entirely fixed on the supreme.
This is where the real work begins.
Let's unpack the phrasing there. Because firm in the vow of a celibate sounds very dogmatic to a modern listener. What does that actually mean in the context of someone who might just be a regular person trying to meditate?
Shankaracharya's commentary is incredibly helpful here in getting past the dogma. This internal posture is the real foundation. Let's start with free from fear.
Okay.
Shankaracharya notes that this is absolutely paramount. If you are harboring anxiety or fear, your sympathetic nervous system is fully engaged. You are in fight-or-flight survival mode, not meditation mode.
Right, you're looking for lions.
You cannot transcend the ego if the ego inherently thinks it is under attack.
That makes perfect sense.
Now, regarding the vow of a celibate, the Sanskrit term there is brahmacharya. While it historically included strict celibacy for monks, the deeper psychological translation in this context implies a complete radical conservation of vital energy.
Energy conservation. I really like that framing better.
Yes, it is a conscious withdrawal from all sensory indulgence, whether that's sexual energy, overeating, obsessing over mindless entertainment, or whatever it is that dissipates your life force.
Doom scrolling on your phone.
Exactly. Doom scrolling is a perfect modern example. It is the conscious decision to stop leaking your energy out into the world so that all of your physical, emotional, and psychological resources can be pooled and channeled upward into this single-pointed concentration.
You're gathering your strength.
The ultimate goal is to bring the mind under the complete subjugation of the self. You need every ounce of your energy to pull that off.
If you're listening, think about how often you try to sit down and focus, but your mind is just fragmented into 100 different tabs, just like a web browser.
Oh, yes.
You're thinking about your fear regarding an upcoming meeting. You're digesting a heavy meal. You're visually distracted by your messy room. Krishna is basically saying you have to close all the tabs.
Every single one.
Notice how physical stillness and environmental control are the absolute prerequisites for mental purification. You simply cannot command the mind to be still if the body is fidgeting, if the eyes are darting around scanning for threats, or if the nervous system is flooded with fear. The physical mechanics strictly create the container for the psychological work to even begin.
It is a profound, incredibly logical sequence. You arrange the external environment to eliminate threats and discomfort. You lock the physical body into an immovable posture. You focus the senses to a point of static convergence, and only then do you have the necessary leverage to actually turn around and wrestle with the mind itself.
But, as anyone who has ever tried to sit down and meditate knows perfectly well, stilling the body is the easy part. You can buy the perfect meditation cushion, you can sit perfectly straight, and you can stare at your nose all day long. Stilling the mind is where the real agonizing battle begins.
It's the ultimate battlefield.
And this brings us to one of the most beautiful, evocative, and ultimately relatable segments of the entire text.
Yes. To describe the ultimate goal of all this physical and internal alignment, the text introduces a striking metaphor. It says that when the mind is fully restrained and concentrated, when it is completely withdrawn from sensory distractions, it is like a lamp in a windless place that does not flicker.
A lamp in a windless place, it is such a vivid, gorgeous image.
It really is.
In that state of unwavering stillness, the text says the yogi experiences absolute, limitless bliss. A bliss that is intuited by the intellect but goes completely beyond the boundaries of the physical senses.
Beyond anything you can touch or see.
But here is where I completely 100% relate to Arjuna in this dialogue. Because Krishna is painting this gorgeous picture of the windless lamp, this perfect, serene stillness, and Arjuna, listening to this, basically throws his hands up in the air in utter frustration.
He's just had enough.
Right. He complains to Krishna that the mind is restless, untractable, and unyielding. He famously says that trying to control the mind is like trying to catch the wind in your bare hands.
It is a moment of deep, piercing psychological realism. We really have to remember who Arjuna is here.
Right, he's not just some guy.
Exactly. Arjuna is a legendary warrior. He is a man of immense, unparalleled physical discipline. He can shoot arrows with pinpoint accuracy while completely blindfolded. He has absolute mastery over his physical environment and his physical body.
He's basically a superhero.
Yet he openly admits total defeat when facing the chaotic landscape of his own internal mind. What is truly brilliant about this ancient text is that Krishna does not dismiss Arjuna's frustration.
He doesn't just tell him to get over it.
No. He doesn't say, oh, you just aren't trying hard enough. He validates it as a profound universal psychological truth. Krishna agrees with him.
That's so validating.
He says, undoubtedly, O mighty armed one, the mind is restless and exceedingly difficult to control. This text, written thousands of years ago, perfectly acknowledges the exact same cognitive turbulence, the exact same ADHD-like distraction that we experience today when we sit down and try to focus on our breath.
So what does this all mean for us? If even the great disciplined warrior Arjuna feels like he's trying to catch a hurricane with his bare hands, what hope do we have?
It seems bleak, right?
Yeah. What is the actual solution? But Krishna doesn't just validate the pain and leave him hanging. He provides a twofold, highly practical solution directly in the text. He introduces the concepts of Abhyasa and Vairagya.
These two concepts are the twin engines of mental control. They are literally the only way to build that windless place.
Okay, break these engines down for us.
Let's start with Abhyasa. On a surface level, it translates to practice or repetition. But Shankaracharya provides a very specific operational definition here. He defines Abhyasa not just as doing something over and over like a robot, but as the constant, vigilant repetition of a single thought on the mental plane, uninterrupted by any contrary idea.
Uninterrupted. That's tough.
It is the active, continuous, and often exhausting effort to return the wandering mind back to the chosen object of focus.
It's exactly like lifting weights for your attention span.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
It's not about achieving a perfect blank mind immediately. Every single time you realize you are thinking about your grocery list or an email instead of your breath, and you consciously pull your attention back to your breath, that is one rep.
That is the practice.
You just did a bicep curl for your brain. That is Abhyasa. It is the friction of the return. But you need the second part too, because you can't just rely on brute force repetition.
Precisely. If Abhyasa is the accelerator, you need something to cut the drag. The second part is Vairagya, which translates to detachment or the absence of hankering.
Hankering meaning craving or desiring.
Right. Shankaracharya defines this very carefully. It is the absence of hankering for the enjoyment of desirable things, whether those things are seen in this world or unseen in heaven, which comes as a direct result of recognizing the inherent defects in the objects we desire.
Okay, wait. Recognizing the defects. Let's really break that down. What does he mean by defects? It sounds a bit pessimistic, doesn't it? Does he mean I have to pretend I don't like good food or a nice car?
It's not about pretending at all. It's about a cold, rational analysis of reality. Recognizing the defects means fundamentally realizing that the things our mind constantly chases, money, status, sensory pleasure, the new phone, the promotion, they are inherently flawed because they are temporary.
They don't last.
They have a beginning, and therefore they absolutely must have an end. And because they end, relying on them for your identity or your fundamental happiness will mathematically guarantee sorrow.
Because you'll inevitably lose them.
Exactly. The defect is their impermanence. If you truly internalize that these shiny objects are fundamentally defective when it comes to providing lasting, unshakable peace, your mind naturally, organically, stops fighting so hard to chase them.
Oh, I see.
You don't have to force yourself to not want them. The desire just drops away when you see the flaw.
That makes total sense. It's like being on the hedonic treadmill. You know, you think the next promotion will make you happy, you get it, you're thrilled for a week, and then you're immediately anxious about the next promotion.
We're just running in place.
Right. The defect is the treadmill itself. So Vairagya, seeing the treadmill for what it is, cuts the fuel supply to the restless mind. It stops generating new desires, while Abhyasa, the practice, steers the wheel back to the center.
If we look at this through a modern lens, it is an absolute masterclass in cognitive behavioral training. You are simultaneously reducing the gravitational pull of external distractions through logical detachment, while actively strengthening the neural pathways of concentration through repetitive, conscious practice.
They have to work together.
They must work in tandem, yeah.
But let's be real for a second. Even with diligent practice, even with intellectual detachment, this journey is incredibly long. It could take a lifetime or more. And this realization triggers another deep existential anxiety in Arjuna, which I think literally anyone on a spiritual or self-improvement path has felt.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge hurdle.
He asked Krishna essentially, what happens if I go all in on this? I dedicate my life to meditation, I try my absolute best, but my restless mind gets the better of me, or I die before I reach the ultimate goal. What is the fate of the fallen yogi?
It is a profoundly vulnerable question. It's a very valid fear. Arjuna asks, failing to achieve perfection in yoga, what goal does one attain?
What happens to me?
He is terrified that a person who abandons traditional worldly pursuits for spiritual realization, but fails to cross the finish line of enlightenment, will perish like a torn cloud. That is the exact metaphor used in the text.
A torn cloud, meaning a little piece of cloud that breaks off from the main storm, gets blown away by the wind, and just dissolves into the empty blue sky.
Right, it just vanishes.
Belongs nowhere.
Exactly. He fears that this failed yogi dissipates into nothingness, losing both the material success, wealth, and family life of this world, while also failing to secure the spiritual liberation of the next.
So they're just left holding the bag.
They gave up the earthly prize, missed the spiritual prize, and are left with absolutely nothing.
It is the ultimate FOMO, the fear of missing out, but applied to the eternal soul. You gave up the worldly hustle, you didn't buy the nice car, you didn't claw your way to the top of the corporate ladder, but you didn't quite make it to nirvana either. Are you just totally ruined? Did you waste your entire life?
And Krishna's response here is one of the most deeply comforting, incredibly optimistic passages in the entire text. He states unequivocally, with absolute divine authority, no doer of good meets with a bad end, period.
No doer of good meets with a bad end. That's beautiful.
The text then patiently explains the philosophical mechanics of what actually happens to the sincere seeker who falls short due to death and distraction. They do not dissipate like a torn cloud.
Okay, so what happens?
Instead, by virtue of their righteous, sincere efforts, they are reborn into a pure and prosperous home, or, even more rarely and auspiciously, into a family of wise yogis.
That is fascinating. But mechanically speaking, how does that work? Is Krishna sitting there as a judge handing out reward points for trying hard?
No, it's much more elegant than that. In the Vedic framework, it is the fundamental law of karma, which is simply the law of cause and effect. It's not a cosmic reward system. It is spiritual momentum.
Momentum?
Yes. Every single time you practice Abhyasa, every time you pulled your mind back to center, you etched a groove into your consciousness. You fundamentally altered your subtle body. When you die, that physical body drops, but that deeply etched mental momentum continues.
It carries over.
So you are naturally drawn to a subsequent birth that matches that high vibrational frequency. The text says that in that new life, the individual organically regains the wisdom and the spiritual inclination acquired in their previous body, and they simply pick up the tools and strive even harder for perfection. The progress is completely cumulative across lifetimes.
Wow. So you were basically picking up your save game from exactly where you left off.
Yes, that is the perfect way to look at it.
That takes an unbelievable amount of pressure off the current moment. You don't have to achieve perfect enlightenment by next Tuesday. Every single moment spent in genuine Abhyasa, every 5 minutes you spend attempting to still the mind, is eternally banked.
Nothing is wasted.
Nothing is wasted. But let's look at what happens when the save game is finally completed. What happens when a yogi actually masters this? Let's detail the ultimate perspective achieved when this meditation actually succeeds.
The pinnacle.
Right. The text describes it as the vision of sameness. It says the successful yogi treats a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold equally. They see the self existing in everything and everything in the self.
A radical shift in perception.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting and where I actually have to push back again.
Go ahead.
Because how can someone legitimately view dirt and gold as equal? Practically speaking, gold is objectively more valuable in human society. I can't pay my rent with a lump of earth. So is the yogi just delusional?
This is where we have to be very careful about how we interpret ancient mystical texts. Shankaracharya clarifies this beautifully because he anticipates exactly your objection here.
Oh, he knew people would ask this.
Absolutely. This isn't about economic ignorance.
Yeah.
It isn't a brain injury. The enlightened yogi is perfectly aware that gold buys bread in the marketplace and dirt does not. They know how human society functions.
Okay, good.
The equality Krishna is talking about is not material or economic. It is a profound, unshakable spiritual equanimity. When the text says the yogi sees the self existing in everything, it means their perception has penetrated the superficial, atomic layer of material reality.
They're seeing the code in the matrix.
Yes. They realize that the exact same eternal, unchangeable divine consciousness animates the person holding the gold, animates the person holding the dirt, and is the fundamental underlying reality beneath the objects themselves.
Okay. So they aren't blind to the world's value system. They have just completely transcended being emotionally manipulated by it. If someone hands them a bar of gold, they don't lose their mind with greed. If someone steals it, they don't collapse in despair.
Exactly. Because they have accessed the absolute, limitless bliss of the self. That windless lamp burning brightly within the temporary joy brought by gold or the temporary sorrow brought by lacking it simply does not register on their internal Richter scale as significant.
They're already full.
They're completely full. You can't tempt a man who has just eaten an absolute feast with a stale crumb.
That's a great metaphor.
Furthermore, this internal vision of sameness strictly dictates how they treat other beings in the world. The text says they judge happiness and sorrow in all beings by the same standard they apply to themselves.
Meaning, they feel the pain of a stranger exactly as intimately as they feel their own physical pain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Their compassion becomes absolute and universal because the arbitrary boundary of the ego has entirely collapsed. They literally see no difference between their own soul and the soul of another.
The boundary is just gone.
The illusion of separation is gone. When you truly experientially see the exact same divine self in a destitute beggar on the street and a powerful king on a throne, you cannot exploit one, and you cannot covet the position of the other. You achieve total, frictionless harmony with existence.
That level of empathy, that radical collapse of the ego is just so difficult to even wrap our modern, hyper-individualized minds around. And because achieving it is so profound, because it requires such an agonizing journey through the restless mind, the text places the successful yogi in a category entirely their own.
It elevates them above everyone else.
Which brings us to the climax of Chapter 6, what we can call the supremacy of the yogi.
Yes, Krishna makes an ultimate, definitive, almost provocative declaration here at the very end of the chapter.
And if you are listening to this, I really want you to take note of this precise moment in the text. This is the definitive declaration.
He states that the yogi, the one who practices this inward meditation, is superior to the ascetics. The text calls them tapayai, those who perform severe physical penances like fasting for months or standing on one leg.
Okay, so better than the ascetics.
He says the yogi is superior to the scholars, the jnanis, who possess vast theoretical scriptural knowledge. And finally, the yogi is superior to the ritualists, the karmists, those who perform all the correct external Vedic sacrifices and charitable works.
It is an incredibly bold statement to make. Why is the yogi, the person just sitting quietly staring at their nose, supreme over someone who has memorized every sacred scripture in the world or someone who gives to charity every single day? How does Shankaracharya justify this hierarchy?
Shankaracharya's emphasis is crucial to understand why this hierarchy exists, and he goes right back to the mechanics of the mind we discussed earlier.
The purification process.
Exactly.
Right.
He explains that physical penances, theoretical scholarship, and external rituals are all profoundly useful, but they are stepping stones. They are indirect methods.
Like tools in a toolkit.
Fasting can discipline the body. Reading scripture can point your intellect in the right direction. Charity can certainly reduce your selfishness. They can purify the mind, but they cannot, by themselves, cross the final ultimate threshold.
They hit a wall.
Right. Meditation dhyana is the direct mechanism. It is the actual experiential vehicle that purifies the mind of its final, most subtle agitations and unites the seeker directly with the eternal self, with Brahman.
I see. It's the difference between reading a meticulously detailed menu and actually eating the meal.
Perfect analogy, yes.
The scholar has memorized the menu. They know the ingredients of enlightenment. The ritualist is meticulously setting the table with the correct silverware. The ascetic is fasting to ensure they are hungry enough to appreciate the meal.
But none of them are actually eating.
Right. But the yogi, through the brutal, focused discipline of meditation, is the one actually sitting down, putting the food in their mouth, and tasting the absolute limitless bliss.
That is a very apt analogy. The scholar has an incredibly detailed map, but the yogi has actually walked the territory and reached the destination. For the yogi, the knowledge is no longer indirect, conceptual, or borrowed from a book. It has become their living, breathing realization.
And I just want to stop and think about the modern resonance of this text for a moment, because today we live in a world defined by absolute suffocating information overload.
It's everywhere.
We have infinite scholarship right at our fingertips. Through our phones, we are all scholars of a sort. We are constantly engaged in endless hustle, performing an infinite number of actions, trying to optimize our routines. We are modern ritualists to the extreme.
Optimizing every minute of the day.
Yes, yet, despite all this information and all this action, we are collectively more anxious, more depressed, and more distracted than perhaps any generation in history.
It's the great paradox of our time.
This ancient text suggests a devastating critique of our modern lifestyle. It suggests that all the information and all the action in the entire world cannot solve the fundamental restlessness of the human condition. The simple, incredibly profound, and maddeningly difficult discipline of sitting quietly, turning inward, and building that windless place inside ourselves remains the ultimate, untormented path to inner peace and clarity.
It is a timeless diagnosis of the human condition, and honestly, a timeless cure. The noise of the world will always be there. There will always be emails. There will always be political strife. There will always be economic anxiety.
The waves will always crash.
Exactly, just as the literal noise of the Kurukshetra battlefield surrounded Arjuna as he received this very knowledge. The mastery, Krishna is saying, is not in trying to silence the world. You will never slap the ocean into stillness. The mastery is in silencing the mind that reacts to the world.
So, what does this all mean for us as we step away from this deep dive? The ultimate lesson of Chapter 6 is clear. The yogi, through the focused, relentless discipline of meditation, attains direct union with the eternal self.
That is the core takeaway.
They use the booster rocket of outward action to escape gravity. They brave the agonizing turbulence of their own mind using the twin engines of practice and detachment. And they finally, ultimately rest in the profound, unwavering light of the windless lamp.
And in doing so, they achieve a state of being, a lived reality that is completely untouched by the chaotic, painful fluctuations of the material world. They actually find the stillness beneath the waves.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to remind you once again to subscribe, like this audio, and leave your thoughts on this ancient text down in the comments. Are you struggling with the restless mind like Arjuna?
Are you trying to catch the wind?
Or have you found your own booster rockets? Let us know. And you definitely want to hit that subscribe button because our next deep dive is going to be absolutely incredible. We are moving right along to Chapter 7.
Dhyana Yoga.
Exactly. The yoga of knowledge and realization. Having successfully established the inward microscopic practice of meditation, the text is going to shift gears completely and start exploring the macroscopic fabric of the universe itself. We are going from focusing on the tip of the nose to understanding the very nature of reality. You will not want to miss it.
As we conclude today's exploration, I'd like to leave you with one last thing to deeply ponder, connecting back to that beautiful metaphor we unpacked earlier. If a flickering lamp represents our daily, distracted, anxious mind, tossed about violently by the winds of every notification, every fear, and every desire,
Which it does.
what would your life actually look like tomorrow if you could build a windless place inside your own head, even for just 5 minutes?
What happens when you finally stop slapping the waves, let go of the surface, and simply sink into the stillness below? Think about it. We'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.